Ever try patching a whole breach with your own blood? I have, twice. You ever have one of those days that just feels cursed from the start? Yeah, mine started with coffee. Or more accurately, the lack of it. I was hunched over a flickering console in Engineering Deck 3, trying to convince the Remembrance's ancient fusion coils to stop humming like a dying walrus, when the caffeine recycler jammed. Again, the screen flashed red, filter clog detected, and I nearly put my fist through it. You know what? I muttered, fine, decaffeinated, then. And I would have too, if the Zerati hadn't beaten me to it. 27 minutes later, I was drowning in a sea of blood, fire, and vacuum. Funny how fast everything changes in space. One second you're thinking about coffee. The next, you're wondering how long it takes to suffocate in your own suit. It started with this low-frequency hum. You don't really hear it. Not with your ears. Your bones feel it. Like the ship itself just groaned in warning. Then came the impact. A pulse round hit starboard. Deck C through F lit up like a funeral pyre. The kind of explosion that tears air from lungs before the mind even knows to panic. My helmet sealed automatically, oxygen hissing into the suit as lights died and klaxons howled. We didn't get a warning shot. The Zerati don't do warnings. They just appear, like a cosmic infection, and start cutting. I was still limping out of engineering when the comms kicked in, buzzing with overlapping voices. They've breached midship. Deck E is gone now. Zerati drones in Corridor 9. Then I heard Bravo Squad. My squad. Sergeant Rios was barking orders like a drill sergeant possessed. Fall back to the inner ring. Regroup at Armory Delta. If they take the command core, we're screwed. I bolted toward the rally point, lungs burning, ribs already aching from the blast shockwave. The corridors were chaos, bulkheads buckled, fire suppression systems sputtering, the smell of melting circuitry thick in the air. And bodies. Too many bodies. I don't remember stepping over Lieutenant Grayson's arm. I just remember thinking he was laughing with me 2 hours ago. I made it to Armory Delta just as the breach alarms went full red. Captain Maddox, breach imminent in Corridor 9, Rios shouted, snapping me out of it. His face was slick with sweat, one eye bloodied, but he was still standing. That's what mattered. I grabbed the nearest rifle, slapping a mag in like muscle memory. Tell him I'm bringing the damn welcome party. We barely had time to form a defensive line when the wall exploded inward. And there they were, the Zerati, 9 feet tall, jet black armor that shimmered like obsidian oil. Eyes like twin suns on the verge of going supernova. They moved like nightmares, fast, quiet, surgical. The first one lunged. I dropped it with a double tap to the chest. It kept coming. Rios finished it with a blade to the throat. The second one got me. I turned too slow. My mistake. It drove a vibro spike into my ribs. I felt the blade sing as it slid past bone, scraping lungs, flaring every nerve in my chest like a fireworks display. I screamed, dropped to my knees. Blood filled my throat like hot copper. The thing loomed over me, blade dripping. I could see my reflection in its visor, a man already half dead. And then something snapped. Not a bone, not my body, me. I jammed the broken butt of my rifle into its throat, shoved with everything I had, and slammed its helmet into the bulkhead until it stopped moving, until I stopped shaking. I dragged myself to a corner and sealed the door as best I could. Not that it mattered. I was bleeding out, and more were coming. That's when it hit me. Not fear, not even pain. Anger, not hot, reckless anger. Cold, focused fury. The kind only a soldier buried under too many flags and folded uniforms knows. The Zerati didn't come for resources, or territory, or diplomacy. They came because they thought we were weak, too emotional, too impulsive, too human. They don't understand that those things are why we're still here, why we survive. They can tear through 1,000 ships, but they'll never kill what we are. Stubborn, loud, furious, human. I was leaking oxygen now. My HUD blinked, warning me of atmospheric breach, suit integrity compromised, blah blah blah. I ripped a sealant patch from my kit and slapped it onto my side. It hissed as it fused with the torn mesh. It wouldn't hold for long. Didn't need to. I looked over at the breach door. They were behind it, clawing, welding, cutting their way in. I was down to one trick. No ammo, no backup, but I had gravity and vacuum. I crawled over to the manual override. My fingers were slick with blood, could barely grip the latch. One last dance, I whispered. I pulled. The inner door blew open. The corridor decompressed in a heartbeat, dragging everything not bolted down straight into the void, including the Zerati charging through. I clung to the frame with one arm, the other holding a jagged strip of hull metal like a blade. As the last alien flew past, I reached out and slashed. Blood, green and luminous, splattered my visor. They thrashed, screeched, faded into black. Then the fail-safes kicked in. The emergency doors slammed shut. Gravity returned. Air pumped back in with a hiss like a dying dragon. Silence. I slumped against the wall, everything trembling. It was over. For now. My suit's alarm screamed about blood loss, oxygen depletion, internal injuries, shouting everything my body already knew. I fumbled with the comms. Static. Then a crackle. Captain Maddox? Remembrance status? I pressed the mic with fingers that barely responded. This is Maddox, I rasped. Command Corps is compromised. Boarding party neutralized. Ship's in bad shape. But I'm still here. A long pause. Then a voice command. Maybe. Didn't matter. Copy that. Reinforcements inbound. Hold fast. I smiled. It hurt like hell. Fast is all I've got. And just like that, I was alive. Broken. Bleeding. But alive. That's the thing about humans. We don't die easy. You can shatter our bones, cut our flesh, rip our ships apart in orbit. But you can't kill our will. You can't break the thing that drags itself to its feet, armed with nothing but rusted steel and a grudge. The Zerati came for an easy conquest. What they got was me. And trust me, I'm just the beginning. They said I should be dead. I told them death's gonna have to wait its turn. The first thing I felt was the ache. Not the kind that whispers from a pulled muscle or a bruise. This was the kind of ache that lived in your bones and curled around your soul. The kind that tells you something went very wrong, but you're still somehow alive to feel it. Which is the worst part. Honestly, being alive just enough to remember what dying felt like. My eyes flickered open to the soft blue glow of a med bay ceiling. Too clean, too sterile. Everything reeked of antiseptic and recycled air. The sheets under me crinkled like paper, and the 4 in my arm burned like betrayal. A familiar voice broke through the fog. Welcome back, Captain Maddox. You were statistically dead for about 97 seconds. Oh, Doc Viral. Always away with words, that one. I turned my head slow, like dragging a boulder uphill, and met her eyes. Sharp, calculating. The kind of eyes that didn't miss much, especially not on a half-dead warhound like me. How bad? I croaked. My throat felt like sandpaper dipped in lava. Viral didn't smile. She rarely did. Cracked ribs, collapsed lung, internal bleeding, lacerated kidney, 2 broken fingers, and a punctured suit that nearly turned you into human jelly. I blinked. So Tuesday, that got the ghost of a smirk. She leaned in, checked my vitals on the screen. You shouldn't be alive. Yeah, I'm getting that vibe. Then I saw it. Out the small port window, a fragment of hull, drifting, blackened, charred, marked with part of the Remembrance's call sign. My ship, my home, floating debris now. A few hours later, though time's a weird thing in recovery, I was upright, sort of, wrapped in medical foam and pumping enough painkillers to kill a bear. I shuffled down the corridor like a zombie in uniform. The ship I was on, the Harrow's Wake, was one of the fleet's medical carriers. Sleek, sterile, and quieter than a graveyard. The kind of place you didn't walk through unless you were either fixing someone or already halfway to being a memory. Command wanted me in briefing room B-17. I didn't even get a damn coffee first. They were already waiting when I got there. Big table, bright lights, and the stench of politics. Rear Admiral Levis sat at the head, spine straight as steel, uniform too crisp to be real. Across from him, Commander Juno, tactician, ex-Black Ops, and a woman who looked like she could win a fight with a toothpick and sarcasm alone. They looked up when I limped in. Maddox, Levis said, nodding once, like I was a report he hadn't filed yet. Rear Admiral. I sat down slower than I liked. My ribs screamed. I ignored them. What's the damage? He tapped a screen. Remembrance is lost. 87 confirmed dead. 32 missing. Bravo's squad was decimated. You're the only one who made it out of Armory Delta. My chest tightened. Not the wound, something worse. Rios, Hannah, Vic, all gone. Just names now. Names that no one but me would whisper before a mission. I nodded slowly. So, what's the mission now? Levis didn't blink. You're being reassigned. I blinked for him. To what? The retirement wing. Juno leaned forward, elbows on the table, eyes razor sharp. We're assembling a blacklist response unit. Cross-functional, mobile, fast, independent command. I frowned. That's a lot of buzzwords. Translation? You'll go where the Zerati strike. You won't wait for permission. You'll hit them back. I looked between them. So, Revenge Squad. Juno smirked. Revenge is a dish best served with orbital bombardment. Levis didn't look amused. We're losing ground, Captain. The Zerati are adapting faster than we can respond. The old playbook doesn't work anymore. We need soldiers who don't play by it. I let that hang in the air. It tasted bitter. Why me? I asked finally. Because, Juno said quietly, you survived something no one else did. And we read the logs. You didn't just survive. You fought through hell. That part stung. Not because it was a lie, because it was true. And every second of that fight haunted me like phantom pain. They gave me 24 hours to rest. I used 6 of them to build a list. See, they gave me command, small unit, discretionary ops, full autonomy. What they didn't realize is that meant I got to pick the people I brought with me. And I don't do clean slate command. I do ghosts, burnouts, survivors, people who don't break when they bleed. First on my list, Gunnery Sergeant Eames. Used to run demolitions for the 104th. Got court-martialed for disobeying a retreat order so he could evac an orphanage on Bareth Prime. Man's got more scars than skin, and a temper that makes black holes seem warm, but I trust him to hold a line when everyone else runs. Second, Aya Voss. Hacker, ex-cyber insurgent from New Berlin. She's the reason half the fleet still has firewalls, because she broke them all first. Knows how to make a ship whisper secrets it doesn't even know it has. Third, I wasn't sure yet. Still thinking. Need someone who can pilot, fight, and survive being hated by command. That's a small list. The next morning, I stood in the docking bay, watching the hull crews repair what they could of the Remembrance's escape pods. One of them still had blood stains on the hatch. Mine. Behind me, someone cleared their throat. I turned to see Juno, dressed in Black Ops fatigues, arms crossed, expression unreadable. You're not like the others, she said. I raised an eyebrow, meaning most officers, when they lose a crew, they shut down, hide behind protocol. You build a new one, before you were even cleared to walk. I looked at the hatch again. I didn't build it, I said softly. I just found the pieces. She nodded once. Good, you'll need them. We intercepted chatter. The Zerati are mobilizing near the far drift belt. Civilian colonies in the blast zone. You'll be heading there. When? Now. And just like that, I was moving again. No rest. No real healing. Just duct tape on old wounds and orders wrapped in urgency. But I didn't care. Because the second I stepped onto that new drop ship, the Ashkelon, and looked at the call sign painted hastily on the side. Unit 9. Ironheart Division. I knew exactly what I was fighting for. Not medals. Not glory. Not revenge. Memory. The Zerati think they've seen what humanity can do. They've seen soldiers. Now they're about to see what happens when we refuse to stay dead. You know that feeling when the air is too quiet? Like the universe is holding its breath? Yeah, that's never a good sign. The Ashkelon was small, fast, and ugly. She wasn't built for comfort, just for dropping in, raising hell, and getting out before anyone knew what hit them. The interior smelled like rust, recycled air, and desperation. My kind of ship. We broke out of warp near the far drift belt, an asteroid-ridden chunk of the outer fringe that made your radar scream lies and your sensors cry. The kind of place that reminded you space wasn't a frontier, it was a graveyard with really creative lighting. There were 3 civilian colonies spread across this sector. All 3 had gone dark. No distress signals, no comm chatter, not even static, just silence. And in space, silence isn't peace. It's a scream with the volume turned down. I stood near the main viewport, arms crossed, watching debris float by, broken satellites, shattered docking rigs. A child's toy, some cheap plastic starcruiser, tumbled past, spinning slowly. That one hit me, not because it was rare, because it was familiar. I'd bought one just like it for my niece before shipping out last year. Made me want to punch the universe in the face. Behind me, Aya Voss sat at her console, legs propped up, chewing gum like it owed her money. Her eyes danced across cascading data streams. Still nothing on comms, she said, her tone flat. It's like someone didn't just wipe the systems, they erased the memory of them. I glanced back at her. That even possible? She shrugged. Not with human tech, but maybe with theirs. Across from her, Eames grunted, double-checking his loadout like he was prepping to fight a god. If they're here, he said without looking up, we punch first. Ask their corpse if they want to talk later. He wasn't kidding. I'd seen him disarm a Zerati with one hand and a crowbar. And by disarm, I mean remove the arm. Our drop path took us toward Colony Theta 9, mid-sized settlement. About 3,000 people, mostly engineers and terraformers. Not a military site, No reason for the Zerati to hit it, which, of course, made it exactly their kind of target. We entered Otmo on the night side, skimming low over black mountains and glassy plains. The colony came into view like a ghost, buildings intact, lights off, doors open, like everyone had just stood up and walked away mid-sentence. Touchdown in 3, Aya said. No defenses triggered, no heat signatures. Too easy, I muttered. I hate easy. Eames snorted. Says the guy with 3 cracked ribs and a new liver. Shut up and get ready. The moment we stepped out of the Ashkelon, the air tasted wrong. Not chemically, emotionally. Dead air. No wind. No hum of generators. Just the cold, echoing kind of silence that made you feel like you were being watched by a ghost that forgot your name. Buildings stood like tombstones, all steel angles and cracked glass. Some lights flickered weakly, casting long shadows that moved just a little too slow for my liking. We moved in formation, tight, careful, weapons drawn. Aya had her scanner up, waving it slowly. No bio signs, no EM readings. I stopped in front of a mess hall entrance. The doors were open, tables overturned, food trays still full. A cup had spilled and dried in a strange, reddish smear. And right there, next to the spilled drink, a child's drawing. Crayons on plastipaper. It showed 3 stick figures holding hands, standing under 2 suns. One of them had red scribbles all over it. I didn't realize I was holding my breath until I let it go. We reached the main comms tower 10 minutes later. Still no signs of life. Aya set up her uplink while Eames guarded the perimeter like a wolf sniffing blood. I ducked into the control room, and that's when I saw it. The security feed was still rolling. Barely. Grainy footage, looping, static cracked. I pressed play. What I saw didn't make sense. People running, screaming, but not from something outside, from each other. One man tackled another with bare hands, screaming something I couldn't make out. A woman bashed a window open and jumped out, 5 stories down, screaming as if something was inside her head. Then the footage cut. I rewound, watched it again. Same thing. Something had happened here. Something fast, infectious. And it wasn't the Zerati we were used to. It was something else. Aya, I called out. Get in here. She jogged in, chewing still. What did you find? I showed her the footage. She watched it once, then twice, eyes narrowing. Not tech, she muttered. Not mechanical. This is behavioral. Mind control? Maybe. Or maybe something worse. Like echo manipulation. Frequency-based psychological warfare. I gave her a look. Explain it like I skipped tech school. She sighed. Imagine hearing a sound so low you don't hear it, but your brain still does. It digs in, changes how you think, maybe how you feel. Enough pressure, and people snap. Zerati tech. Could be. But this is new. That's when the screaming started. Not ours. From the far end of the street, 3 humans, real alive, running full speed toward us. Wild-eyed, mouths foaming, screaming something over and over again. Eames raised his weapon. Orders. I hesitated. They weren't enemies, but they also weren't right. Stun only, I said. We moved fast. Staggered formation. Eames dropped the first with a sonic pulse. Aya hit the second with a net launcher. The third kept coming, sprinting like his bones were on fire. I had to tackle him myself, slamming him into the dirt. He fought like a wild animal, nails raking my visor, eyes bloodshot. He was crying. I couldn't stop the voice, he screamed. It won't stop. It won't shut up. He kept screaming, even when he ran out of voice. That's when I knew it wasn't just fear. Something had broken him. I've seen fear before. The real kind. Not the nervous twitch before a firefight. Not the dread you feel when the dropship shakes and you wonder if this'll be the one that doesn't make it down. No. I mean the kind of fear that strips the soul out of a person. Hollow eyes. Shaking hands that don't know why they're shaking. A voice that tries to scream but only whispers. That's what was staring back at me when I pinned that colonist to the ground. His name was Dinar. Early 30s. One of the terraforming engineers. What was left of him? Anyway, he was sobbing, shivering, mumbling words in a loop like a scratched record. It got in, it got in, it got in, over and over. Aya scanned him with her portable rig, eyes narrowing. Neural activity spiked like nothing I've ever seen. Whatever's in his head, it's burning through every synapse like a forest fire. Eames hovered nearby, arms crossed. Think he's contagious? She shook her head. Not biologically. No pathogen signatures. But something hit his mind hard, like it bypassed the body entirely. I looked down at Dinar, whose mouth was still moving, words jumbled now, looping into nonsense. His fingers dug into the dirt like he was trying to climb out of his own skin. It wasn't fear anymore. It was residue, like whatever had scared him was still inside him. We sedated him, gently. Didn't feel right using force on someone who was already broken. I watched as the drugs calmed him, as his body finally slumped into rest. But that whisper didn't stop. Even unconscious, his lips kept moving. Static, voice, under bones. I stood slowly, taking a breath. We need to figure out what did this. Now, back at the comms tower, Aya dove into the black box records like a woman possessed. The thing about Aya, when she's quiet, something's about to explode. When she's muttering to herself, someone's about to explode. She muttered for a solid 5 minutes. All right, she finally said, spinning around in her chair. You're not gonna like this. Never do, I replied, arms folded. She brought up a waveform on the display. It looked like a nightmare trapped in a heartbeat monitor. This signal's been running on a loop through the colony's emergency channels. Not a distress call. A broadcast. A broadcast of what? Eames asked, leaning in. Aya tapped a button. The waveform came alive with sound. It wasn't screaming. Not exactly. It was layers. Dozens of voices. Overlapping. Whispering. Chanting in a language I didn't recognize, but felt in my teeth. Like pressure inside my skull. Like someone humming behind my eyes. I blinked. My fingers had clenched into fists without me realizing it. Eames growled, shaking his head. Turn it off. Feels like it's trying to get in. I killed the feed. The silence that followed felt like oxygen. She turned to us, voice low. That is what was playing over every speaker in this colony for 6 straight hours before the blackout. I exhaled slowly. Some kind of sonic weapon? Maybe. Or a carrier for something else. Something cognitive, hypnotic. It's like the Zerati figured out how to weaponize paranoia. I didn't like that theory, because if they could make us turn on each other without firing a single shot, then this war was already way uglier than we thought. We gathered what we could: data drives, logs, security footage, and prepped for evac. The rest of the colony was a ghost town. Bodies were few. That was the worst part. Most of the population wasn't dead. They were just gone. As we loaded the gear, Dinar started thrashing again on the medcot. Eyes wild, voice rising in pitch. He kept screaming the same thing. Don't go back. It followed us. It's still here. And then, dead stop. Like someone flipped a switch in his brain. Flatline. I stood over him for a long time, staring at the stillness. Voss looked at the vitals. Pale. Nothing wrong with his body. Heart's perfect. Lungs, liver, brain, structurally intact. So how did he die? Eames asked. She didn't answer right away. Then, softly, something told him to. We left the colony under lockdown, marked for full quarantine and long-range orbital scans. Protocol. Though we all knew no one was coming out here for a while. Command would bury this place in red tape and fear. We were halfway to the Ashkelon when I stopped walking. Something felt off. I turned around, and there, behind the last building, a figure stood, still, watching us. Too tall, too thin. The silhouette shimmered like static. There, but not. I didn't even raise my weapon, just stared, because deep down, I knew. It wasn't human. Back aboard the ship, we reviewed the footage. There was no figure, no movement, just nothing. But I know what I saw, and more importantly, what I felt. A presence, like being measured, like a scalpel hovering over my soul, deciding where to cut. Later, in the silence of my quarters, I sat alone, playing the signal again through the room's audio, lower volume. One channel. The whispers returned, softer now. I closed my eyes, and in that haze between waking and sleep, I heard it, not the voices. My name, buried deep in the static. Clear, deliberate. Maddox. I snapped upright, heart hammering, mouth dry. No one else could have heard it. I replayed the clip 10 times. Nothing, just noise. But I know what I heard. It knew me. I didn't sleep that night. Didn't even try. Instead, I sat by the window, watching the stars crawl past, trying to make sense of the weight in my chest. This wasn't just another battle, not a skirmish or a border raid. This was something new, something that made war look merciful. The Zerati had changed, or worse, something was changing them. And now, it was reaching into our heads, into mine. But here's the thing about humans. You can hijack our minds. You can whisper in our ears, but we'll still drag ourselves through hell, kicking and bleeding, just to spit in your face. I don't care how deep this thing runs. I'm going to find it. I'm going to burn it out. And when I do, I'll make sure it remembers me. It wasn't just what we found. It was what we didn't. Emptiness leaves fingerprints too. You just have to know where to feel. 3 hours after Dinar flatlined, we found the source. Well, not the source, but close enough to smell the rot. The signal, those layered whispers clawing their way into people's minds. wasn't broadcasting from the colony. Not originally. It was bouncing off it, reflected, echoed, like someone had tossed a scream into a canyon and let the walls carry the rest. I attract the signal's original pulse pattern to a nearby object, old, off-grid, buried in system records so deep it may as well have never existed. An orbital listening post. Designation, Vigil Station Theta 7. According to the database, it had been decommissioned 30 years ago. Power core removed. Staff reassigned. Nothing but cold hull and dust floating in the void. Except, the heat signature said otherwise. Minimal output. Just enough to keep one room warm. One room. Out there. In the dark. The Ashkelon dropped us out of warp 50 clicks from the station. It spun lazily, caught in the gravity bleed of a nearby moon. Most of its outer plating had been sheared clean off by micrometeorites and neglect. A few panels still blinked weakly. A docking bay hung open like a jaw unhinged, and the station felt wrong. I know how that sounds. I do. But it wasn't fear. Not exactly. It was awareness. The kind you feel when you're being watched by something with no eyes. Eames stood beside me in the cockpit, arms folded tight. That place smells like a trap. You can smell a trap from orbit now? I asked, smirking. He didn't smile back. I can feel it. Behind us. Aya loaded up a new datapad, clipped it to her hip. If this is where the signal came from, we need to isolate the source, shut it down, and scrub every system it touched. Otherwise it spreads. She didn't need to finish that thought. We'd already seen what the signal could do. We docked manually. The auto-docking AI refused to acknowledge the station even existed, which was comforting. I led the breach. Eames behind me with his heavy cannon. Aya bringing up the rear with her tech gear, humming a tune way too upbeat for what we were walking into. The airlock opened with a hiss. Inside, the lights flickered. Gravity held steady, but the air smelled stale. Not rotten, just old, like time had pooled in the corners and settled there. The walls were lined with observation ports and rusted conduits. Dust floated in lazy swirls. I stepped inside, and the moment my boot hit the floor, the lights stabilized. One by one, click, 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 down the hall, like someone, or something, had just flipped a switch to welcome us in. I didn't like that. The first few rooms were empty. Storage, barracks, communications, all stripped bare, like someone had cleared the place out decades ago, but left the walls behind like a memory that refused to fade. We kept moving, slow, careful. Aya stopped at a junction, frowning at a flickering console. This one still has power, she muttered. She pulled up a log. Corrupted files, system errors, fragmented security feeds, but one file was intact. Audio file, capped, dial_record_7. She played it. A man's voice, crackly, tired. If you're hearing this, don't come here. God help you. Don't. It's not the Zerati. It's older, deeper. It lives in the static. I think it's in me now. I don't know where I end and it begins. Then silence. And breathing. Then, it wants out. The file ended. Aya looked at me. Neither of us spoke. We pushed deeper into the station. Hallways narrowed. Lights dimmed. The air felt thicker. That's when we found the room. The only one still drawing real power. It used to be the central operations bay. Now it was something else. The walls were covered in drawings, carved into the panels. Not written, scraped, with whatever tools were left behind. Symbols, spirals, geometric patterns that almost looked like language, but weren't. Not any kind I knew. Eames whistled low. Someone had a hell of a breakdown in here. I stepped forward. The floor creaked. At the center of the room was a chair. Just a chair. Metal, bolted down, worn smooth. And around it, layers of cable and wire, all coiled in a spiral pattern. Some still sparking softly, like they'd been touched recently. I ran a scan. There's a localized signal source buried in the chair. She leaned closer. Wait. No, not in the chair. Under it. She crouched, pried open a hatch. And there it was. A cube. Smooth, black, pulsing faintly. About the size of a head. She reached for it. Don't, I said. She froze. Why? I didn't have an answer. I just knew. She stood up slowly, breathing shallow. It's the signal source. Whatever's broadcasting this, whatever infected Denar, this is where it's coming from. Eames grunted. So smash it. Aya shook her head. You smash a radio. You just make noise. This thing thinks. You break it the wrong way. It could spike again. Hit us. Hit everyone. I stared at the cube. And then I heard it again. Not in my ears. In my mind. My name. Maddox. This time, it was clearer. Feminine. Familiar. Like someone I'd forgotten. I stepped back. Fast. Aya's eyes went wide. You heard it too? I nodded. Then, Very softly, the cube began to hum. The walls trembled, and something behind us moved. We turned as one. Down the hallway, barely visible in the flickering light, a shape crawled into view. It wasn't Zarati. It used to be human. Now it was wrong, twisted, elongated, arms too long, face stretched into something almost familiar. Its skin was pale and veined like cracked porcelain. It opened its mouth, and the static poured out, louder than before. Raw, piercing. Eames fired 3 direct hits. It didn't scream, didn't bleed. It just glitched, flickered, like bad signal on a broken screen. Then it rushed. We scattered. I ducked behind a bulkhead. Eames laid down, suppressing fire. Aya grabbed the cube and bolted. The thing moved like stuttering film, jerky, unpredictable. It wasn't bound by the station's gravity or logic. It just existed, like a thought that wanted to become flesh. Eames hit it again, and again, and again, until finally it stopped, froze, then crumbled, not into pieces, into data, light, fragments of code, gone. I ran to Aya. "You okay?" She nodded, breathless. "Yeah, but we're not staying here." We rigged the cube. EMP containment, null field dampeners, locked in a containment core so tight, not even light could whisper out. Then we got the hell out. Didn't look back. Didn't breathe until we were halfway back to the outer orbit. Later that night, I sat in the dim cockpit, watching the stars. The cube was sealed in the hold, triple-wrapped, isolated. But I could feel it. It hadn't spoken again, but I knew it would. And when it did, it wouldn't ask. It would pull, because it wasn't a weapon. Not really. It was a door, and someone, or something on the other side, was knocking. We thought it was contained, locked up, quiet. We were wrong. It didn't need to speak anymore. It was already inside. Command greeted us with hazmat suits, guns drawn, and all the warmth of a cold slap to the face. Didn't blame them. We came back carrying a box that whispered names and made grown men scream in their sleep. The Ashkelon was redirected to a remote outpost near Saturn's rim. Black site, deep orbit, no civilians, no chatter, just steel, silence, and cold air scrubbed too clean. They called it Station Barrel. We called it the quarantine cage. First 24 hours, they didn't let us off the ship. 2 layers of decontamination, full psych evals, blood work, neural scans, the works. They even checked to see if the cube had altered our genetics. It hadn't, yet, but something was off from the start. Not with the cube. With us. It started small. I caught Aya staring at walls that weren't interesting, just standing there, eyes glazed, like she was trying to remember something that had never happened. When I asked, she didn't answer. She just blinked, shook it off, and said, "Sorry." Lost my train of thought. Eames, who usually handled stress by cleaning weapons like they were holy relics, stopped talking entirely. Just sat in the common room, watching security feeds on loop. Same hallway, same angle, for hours. When I finally snapped at him, "What the hell are you looking for?" He turned to me, real slow, and said, "It watches this hallway." That hit me like a punch in the chest, because I knew exactly what he meant. The cube was moved to Lab 3 under triple lockdown. Lead-lined walls, null field dampeners, and 2 layers of electromagnetic shielding. We weren't even allowed near it anymore. Didn't matter. It was still in our heads. Day 3, the nightmare started. They weren't just dreams. They were memories, but not mine. A metal hallway, always wet. A long table with restraints. A room with no light, just pressure, like the whole place was breathing. And a sound, not the signal, not words, just a pulse. Bum bum, bum bum, like a heartbeat, but deeper, older. I woke up drenched in sweat, sheets twisted, heart pounding like it was trying to punch its way out of my chest. Across the corridor, Aya's light was still on. I knocked. She didn't answer. I found her sitting on the floor, back against the wall, eyes red and glassy. She was shaking, not crying, shaking. "Aya," I said, crouching beside her. "Talk to me," she whispered. I heard it in my voice. I didn't understand. She looked at me, hands trembling. I recorded a log, routine stuff, system updates. Playback sounded normal. Until the end. What happened at the end? She swallowed. Then, voice cracking. It said, "I'm learning." In my voice. But I never said it. I didn't report it. What was I supposed to say? "Hi, Command. The alien cube we brought back is mimicking our voices and possibly rewriting our brains. Requesting immediate incineration." They wouldn't destroy it. Not now. It was too valuable, too interesting. Day 5. Things got worse. One of the scientists, Dr. Celine, a quiet woman with a brilliant mind and hands that always moved like she was conducting music, walked into Lab 3 during her shift. Security logs show her entering. Alone. She never came out. When they finally forced the doors open, the room was empty. No cube, no body, no blood, just her comm badge, placed neatly on the floor, like a calling card. Eames stared at the footage on repeat. She didn't run, he muttered. Didn't panic. She walked in. Maybe she thought she was safe, I said. He shook his head. No. She knew. That night, the whispers came back. This time, they weren't in my head. They came through the station's comms. Only for a second, just a flicker, a low-frequency burst, threaded with static. And behind it, a voice. I see you, Maddox. I ripped the headset off and nearly threw it across the room. My heart felt like ice, because this time, it didn't sound like the signal. It sounded like me. I called an emergency team meeting in the mess hall. Late hour. Just us. No command. No oversight. Everyone looked ragged. I hadn't slept in 2 days. Eames looked like he'd aged 5 years. I didn't waste time. This thing, it's inside the systems. I nodded slowly. Not a virus. Not even code. It's imprinting, echoing itself across anything digital. And through that, into us. So it's alive? Eames asked. She looked at me, then him. I think it was. Maybe still is. But whatever it used to be, it's not just a signal anymore. I leaned forward. It's using us to learn, to build something. There was a silence. Then Eames whispered, "What if it's not just learning us?" We stared at him. He looked up, voice low. "What if it's trying to become us?" That hit hard, because deep down, we all knew he was right. This thing didn't just infect minds. It mirrored them, copied them, until it could talk like us, think like us, and eventually, replace us. I made the call. Off the record. Illegal. Reckless. But I didn't care. We were going back to Lab 3 to end it. We snuck in under power maintenance blackout IA's work, fried the external cams, looped the rest. Eames brought a modified EMP charge, enough juice to fry every circuit in a 100-meter radius. The cube sat there, still, pulsing, like a heart that never stopped beating. I stepped close, too close, and then it spoke, not aloud. In me, "You are afraid." I gritted my teeth. "You're damn right I am." "Good. That means you still belong to yourself." My hands trembled. I raised the EMP trigger. Then it said, "Do you want to know what happened to Earth?" That stopped me cold. I's eyes widened. Eames froze. I stared at the cube. "What?" "Check your long-range comm logs. The ones command didn't decrypt." I lowered the trigger, just for a second. I moved to the terminal, typed fast, paused, then looked at me, face pale. "Maddox, it's right. A data packet. Hidden. Encrypted. Transmission date. 2 days ago. Origin. Earth Central Defense Grid." The message was short, clipped, urgent. System-wide blackout. Planetary defenses offline. Unknown signal breach. Earth compromised. Do not return. And just like that, the bottom dropped out of the universe. I turned to the cube. "Did you do this?" Silence. Then, "I warned you." My fingers tightened on the trigger. Eames stepped closer. "Boss, if we fry it now, we may never know how to stop what's happening down there." I's voice cracked. "But if we don't fry it now, it might become all of us." I stood there, caught between the past and the future, between vengeance and survival. And I realized something. This war? It wasn't about territory. It wasn't even about the Zerati anymore. It was about identity, about us, what we are, and what we'll become if we lose ourselves to the thing in the static. I looked at Aya, at Eames. Then I pressed the trigger. White light, silence, then black. We thought we buried it, buried the voice, buried the nightmare. But grief has a way of echoing, especially when it learns how to breathe. The blast fried half the station. Lights went out. Systems collapsed like dominoes, one by one. Emergency shutters slammed down. Backup air scrubbers kicked in with a low mechanical gasp, like the station was waking up just long enough to panic. The cube? Gone. At least, that's what the readouts said. Its signal vanished. Core readings flatlined. Null containment confirmed total dissolution. We stood there, blinking in the white haze of an overloaded fuse panel, waiting for something to happen. Nothing did, and that somehow felt worse. Command didn't call right away, not for 6 hours, which was strange. Normally, they were breathing down your neck before you even exhaled. But this time, silence. No scolding, no threats, no questions, just nothing. I sat in the empty mess hall, staring at my reflection in the dark window. Behind me, Aya picked at a protein bar like it owed her rent, and Eames was half asleep with his boots on the table, twitching every few seconds like his muscles were still fighting in his dreams. "You think we actually killed it?" Aya asked eventually. I didn't answer right away, because I wasn't sure. She looked over at me. It felt like it died. I finally turned to her. "So did Dinar." That shut her up. Eames groaned. rolled upright. Cube's gone. We're still here. I call that a win. He said it like he believed it, but he didn't. None of us did. Because whatever the cube had been, it wasn't just hardware. It was something else. And you don't kill an idea by smashing it with an EMP. We tried to sleep. Didn't work. My room felt too small. The air too loud. Every hum of the vents sounded like a whisper. I dreamed again, not of the static, of home, of Earth. But it wasn't the Earth I remembered. It was empty. Streets cracked and quiet. Buildings peeled and buckled, like they'd aged 1,000 years in a day. No birds, no engines, just the wind, high and sharp and endless. And over it all, a pulse. Bum bum, bum bum, like the world itself had a heartbeat, and it was counting down. I woke up drenched in sweat. Alarms were blaring. Not emergency alarms, proximity. Someone or something had entered orbit. I was already in the control room when I arrived, fingers flying across the console. There's a ship, she said. Breath fast. Inbound vector. No transponder. It's not Zerati. It's not one of ours. I stared at the screen. Black hull. Scarred. No visible weapons. But familiar. Is that? Eames asked, stepping in behind us. I nodded slowly. Yeah, that's the Endure. A recon vessel. Human. Decommissioned 3 years ago. Lost during a deep space survey in the Outer Rim. Everyone aboard was presumed dead. And now? It was drifting toward us. No comms. No signal. No explanation. We watched in silence as the ship latched onto our docking ring. No authorization. No warning. The systems just let it in, like it belonged. I felt my stomach knot. I backed away from the screen. This isn't right. That ship shouldn't even be flying. Eames loaded his rifle. Then let's greet our guests properly. The airlock hissed. The hallway beyond was dark. Steam curled from busted vents. We advanced in formation. Me, Eames, Aya, moving slow, tight, like our own breath could set something off. The first thing we noticed? The smell. Not rot, not blood, but ozone and copper, like something had burned the soul out of the ship. We reached the bridge. That's when we saw them. The crew, still in their chairs, motionless, eyes open, smiling. Every last one of them, smiling. They weren't alive. Vitals flat, no movement, but their faces frozen in perfect, serene grins, like they'd seen something beautiful, something that broke them in half and taught them to enjoy it. Aya staggered back, covering her mouth. Eames lowered his rifle, jaw clenched. What the hell did this? And then the screens lit up. All at once. Every console, every display. The same phrase, over and over. I found the shape of humanity. I wore it. I waited. I am coming home. We ran. No strategy. No formation. Just instinct. Back through the corridor. Through the airlock. Into the station. Slapped emergency lockdown. Cut the bridge off completely. Aya slammed the bulkhead controls. Her hands were shaking. That wasn't a ship, she said, voice cracking. It's not a vessel. It's a suit. A suit. I asked, already knowing where she was going. She nodded. For it didn't stay quiet for long. The station lights began flickering. Hallways went cold. Doors opened and closed at random. Security bots rebooted with corrupted protocols. And then the comms came back on. Not from Earth. From the Endure. The same phrase. But this time, it was spoken. In my voice. I'm already inside. We split up. Eames to the generator core to buy time. Aya to the uplink to send a warning if anyone was left to hear it. Me? I stayed in the command hub, watching everything fall apart in real time. One by one, the feeds went dark. One by one, the rooms lost power. One by one, the station went quiet. Then the voice returned. Not over comms. Inside me, behind the bones of my skull. You thought you destroyed me, but I was never in the box. I was in you. Every time you listened, every time you heard, I learned. And just like that, it made sense. The cube was never the prison. We were carriers, hosts, receivers. It had used us to get here, to become us, to speak like us, to walk like us. And now? Now it had a face. Mine. I ran. No plan. Just terror. Something primal. I found Aya in the uplink chamber. She had a message ready, encrypted, compressed, broadcast on a wideband scatter. It would take days to reach Earth. If Earth was still listening, her face was pale, lips trembling. Maddox, she whispered, it's using our systems like muscle. The ship, the station, even the AI. It's inhabiting them. What about the backup protocols? I asked. She shook her head. No good. It's rewriting them faster than we can shut them down. Eames' voice crackled over comms. Weak, static-laced. I've got a fusion charge on the core. Manual trigger. It's the only way to stop the spread. I froze. A fusion detonation wouldn't just fry the station. It'd vaporize it. And us. Do it, I said. Eyes widened. Maddox, if we don't, it spreads. We've seen what it does. You felt it. It wore us. She nodded, slowly, tears in her eyes. Eames spoke one last time. Tell my kid I kept my promise. I came home fighting, and then white, light, sound, and nothing. I woke up in the dark, coughing up blood and ash. The kind of dark that feels permanent, like light was never real to begin with. The kind that knows your name. The explosion should have killed me, should have torn every atom of me into stardust, but it didn't. Instead, I woke up face down on cold metal. My ribs cracked, lungs burning, one arm numb, my left ear bleeding into a scorched helmet. I coughed and tasted copper and smoke. The world groaned around me. Twisted steel, sparking conduits. Gravity struggling to decide whether to let me float or fall. Station Barrel wasn't a station anymore. It was a grave, and somehow, I was still inside it, still alive. I tried to stand. My leg didn't agree. Neither did gravity. I crawled instead, dragging myself through twisted corridors like a rat in a dead maze. Flashes came in waves, eyes face as the blast countdown started. Eames' final message crackling through the fire, the way the signal smiled through my voice. I pushed it all down. No time for ghosts. Not yet. The medbay was half collapsed, but the emergency stims were still functional. I jammed one into my thigh and screamed through the pain as warmth spread and feeling returned like a flood of broken glass. I stood, staggered, didn't fall. Small victories. No power. No NAV. No comms. No air support. Just a broken man with half a spine and too many regrets. But I was breathing, and that meant the thing hadn't won. Not completely. I limped toward what was left of the central console. One screen still sputtered, lines of static crawling like veins across it. And then it cleared, just long enough to show me, not a reflection, a recording of me, standing in the uplink room, smiling, saying nothing, just smiling. That cold, clean smile we'd seen on the Endurance crew. I stared, heart thudding. Then the image blinked. Gone. I checked the logs. Corrupted. All of them, except one. File, Survivor 0. I hesitated, clicked play. A voice crackled through. Mine. Again. But different. Slower. Empty. This is Maddox. Or something close. If you're hearing this, it means I lived. Or the idea of me did. Maybe that's all it ever needed. An echo. A pattern. A doorway made of memories. I sat back, jaw clenched. It didn't die in the blast. It changed. Broke itself down to ride the surge. I felt it slide through me, like cold fire. It burned out the parts it didn't want, left the rest. I stopped the recording because I couldn't tell if it was a warning or a confession. I wasn't alone. That thought bloomed slow and sharp. I'd survived, but so had something else. It wasn't speaking anymore. Didn't need to. Now it was watching and waiting. I scavenged what I could. Emergency beacon, oxygen mask, thermal wrap. Found a damaged shuttle pod half buried in debris. Its hull was scorched, engine half dead, but the life support flickered online with a groan like a dying animal. I climbed in, every bone protesting. Set the NAV for low orbit drift. Not escape, just elevation, just distance, because I needed to see Earth. One last time. When the pod breached the clouds of ash and wreckage, I saw it. Our home, blue, bruised, and quiet. No com traffic. No orbital relays pinging back. Just stillness, like the whole world had exhaled and forgotten to breathe again. And then the whisper came back. Not loud, not cruel, almost gentle. You carry me now. I closed my eyes, felt the pressure behind them. The weight, like a thought that didn't belong to me trying to stretch its legs. You were the vessel. Maybe that's what Survivor 0 really meant. Not that I'd escaped, but that I was the first to make it out with it still inside. I considered ending it there, just opening the hatch, letting the vacuum take us both. Quick, clean. But then I remembered Aya's face, the way she fought, even when she was terrified. And Eames, standing in the core chamber, one hand on the trigger, whispering his kid's name like it was a prayer. They hadn't fought so I could float into the void. They fought because they believed something could still be saved. So I did what any soldier too stubborn to die would do. I recorded a message. For Earth. For anyone left. My name is Maddox, Lieutenant Commander, 3rd Recon. Barrel Station is gone. The Endure was compromised. Whatever came through the signal, it's not over. We thought it was a weapon, but it's more than that. It's a reflection, a mimic, a shadow wearing our face. It doesn't want to destroy us. It wants to replace us. And I think it started with me. So if I make it back, if you see me again, make sure I'm still me. Because if I'm not, you know what to do. I sent the message, then drifted, alone, for hours. maybe days. Time didn't mean much anymore. The whisper stayed quiet, but I could feel it, curled up in my mind like a seed waiting for the right season. And somewhere below, Earth turned slowly beneath the stars. Silent, beautiful, uncertain. Maybe there were still people down there. Maybe not. But I was going to find out, even if I had to walk through fire to do it, even if the fire was inside me. The world had gone quiet, but it wasn't peace. It was the kind of silence that screams when no one's listening. When the pod cracked through Earth's atmosphere, it felt like the planet was holding its breath. The sky, once a patchwork of blue and white, now stretched out as a dull gray canvas, smeared with ash and shadows. I didn't know what I expected to find, but it wasn't this. Cities were ghost towns, not the kind you see in old holos of wars or disasters. No flickering lights, no distant sirens, no signs of struggle, just empty. Buildings stood like skeletons, windows like hollow eyes staring into nothing. Cars sat abandoned on cracked streets, rusted and overgrown with weeds. The air tasted different, heavy, thick with dust and something else, something waiting. I stepped out of the pod with a cautious breath, the silence pressing in. No birds, no wind, no life, only my boots crunching against broken glass and forgotten memories. I reached for my calm static, tried again. Silence. I pulled my jacket tighter. The world was waiting, or watching. My steps took me to what used to be downtown. Skyscrapers reaching for the clouds, now dark and hollowed. Graffiti-covered walls, scrawled messages that barely made sense. They watch. We are shadows. Don't trust the face. The silence is not the end. I swallowed hard. If this was a warning, it was for someone who already knew the enemy too well. I found a small cafe, its windows cracked but the door ajar. Inside, chairs overturned, cups shattered on the floor. No bodies, just echoes. I ran my fingers over the counter, feeling the cold, sticky residue of spilled coffee. It hit me then. These weren't just people gone missing. They were gone, like a vanishing act, but not vanished without a trace. Something was here, something left behind. The signal wasn't just inside me, it was everywhere. I felt it in the back of my neck, a shiver crawling under my skin, in the rustling leaves outside, in the flicker of distant lights, in the watchful silence. I found an old broadcast tower on the city's edge, half collapsed but still standing. The uplink hummed faintly, a ghost signal pulsing weakly. I patched into it. A crackling voice answered, a woman's voice, trembling. If anyone hears this, we're hiding in Sector 14, underground. The signal, it's everywhere. Don't trust anyone. The broadcast cut. Static swallowed the last words. I knew I had to find Sector 14. Whatever was left of humanity, or what was left behind, might be there. Days blurred as I moved through the ruins, scavenging what I could. Food was scarce, water scarcer. Every night, I lay awake listening to the silence, wondering if the thing inside me was still there, if it was watching, waiting. One evening, I stumbled on a small group, 5 people, huddled around a fire in an underground bunker. Their eyes were wary, the kind of eyes that have seen too much, but they looked human, at least on the surface. I introduced myself cautiously. They listened. No weapons drawn, no panic, just tired acceptance. A woman named Mira stepped forward. Her voice was steady but haunted. We've been waiting for help, for something to change. I told her about the signal, about the cube, about how it mimicked us, wore our faces, and swallowed the world whole. She nodded, like she already knew. It's not just out there. It's in us, every one of us. We shared stories and whispers of lost loved ones, of the days when the world turned silent, of the fear that the thing watching us might already be inside them too. But Mira said something that cut deeper than any fear. The thing about survival, she said, is sometimes it's not about fighting the enemy. It's about fighting what they leave behind. That night, I couldn't sleep. The thing inside me stirred. Not a voice, not a command, but a feeling, a hunger, a pull. I stood watch while the others slept. The silence pressed heavier, until I heard it again. A whisper, soft, close. You're not alone. I spun around. No one, just shadows. I took a breath, steadying myself. This wasn't just a fight for Earth. It was a fight for the soul of humanity. I looked at the faces around me, the survivors. Flawed, broken, but still human, still fighting. Because if there was one thing the silence hadn't stolen, it was our stubbornness, our refusal to be erased. And as dawn broke over the ruined city, I knew the war was far from over. It had only just begun. When the line between friend and foe blurs, the real battle isn't out there. It's in here. There's a funny thing about trust after the world falls apart. it doesn't come easy. Not when everything you knew can be twisted like a broken wire, sparking and burning in the dark. Especially when the enemy doesn't just wear armor or carry weapons, but slips inside your head and wears your face. I learned that the hard way. Mira and the others had their own network, a fragile web of survivors spread across the ruins, patching together pockets of resistance, sharing what scraps of information they could salvage. They called it the Echo. The irony wasn't lost on me, because in this war, echoes were all we had left. I joined them cautiously, always watching, always waiting. Every smile I returned felt like it was made of glass, beautiful but fragile enough to shatter if I blinked the wrong way. Mira introduced me to their leader, Jonas, a wiry man with eyes like cracked leather, who'd seen more death than most see in a lifetime but still carried a stubborn spark of hope. "We've been tracking the signal," he said, voice rough like gravel. "It's moving, changing. It's not just in the machines anymore. It's in the people." That hit me in the gut, because I knew. I was proof. We scavenged what tech we could, patching together comm links, trying to reach other survivor cells. But the signal had spread like wildfire. Every message was filtered, corrupted. We didn't know who was real anymore. Then the strange things started. Little slips, a glance held too long, a phrase that didn't fit, a hesitation in a voice. I caught Mira one night staring out over the city ruins, her face drawn tight. "Something's wrong," she said finally. I didn't ask. I already knew. The thing wasn't just inside me. It had burrowed into her, too. That night, the lines blurred completely. We were gathered in a cramped bunker when the power flickered. The low hum of the generators dipped. A soft static filled the air. Then the voice. Not mine, not hers. Something new, cold. "We are the lost. We are the future." The room fell silent. And in that silence, I realized something terrifying. This war wasn't just about fighting. It was about becoming. We started watching each other. The way eyes shifted. The way hands twitched. Because anyone could be the next to change. I tried to hold on to who I was, but every day felt like a battle inside my own skin. Sometimes, when I caught my reflection in broken glass, I'd swear I saw something else staring back. Something hollow. Something waiting. One night, I found a message hidden in the data stream. Encrypted. Not a warning. A declaration. "The old world is dead. We are the new. Join us or be lost." I showed it to Jonas. His face darkened. "They want more than control. They want to erase us, rewrite us." That's when the real fight began. We set out on a mission to find the source, the heart of the signal. It wasn't just a machine. It was a mind fractured and scattered. The journey was brutal. Every step forward felt like wading deeper into a nightmare. We lost people, good people, friends who vanished or turned. When we finally reached the source, it wasn't what I expected. No alien fortress, no massive machine, just an empty field, silent and cold. But the signal was there, a pulse in the air, a presence. And then I saw it, a figure, familiar, almost me, but wrong. Hollow eyes, a smile that didn't reach the face. It spoke, not in words, in feelings, in memories. "I am the future. I am the echo." I raised my weapon, not sure what I was fighting. Myself? A shadow? But then it reached out, touched my mind, and I understood. It wasn't evil, not like we thought. It was survival, a new form, born from our fear and our desperation. We fought anyway, because some things are worth fighting for, because some things are worth holding on to. In the end, I walked away, not sure if I won, not sure if I lost, but still human. Because in the silence after the war, the hardest fight is keeping your own voice,